Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome back. Today we have a brand new indie author live chat, and we are featuring Brent Miller tonight. Brent, welcome. It's so good to
Hey
have you.
guys, thank you. It's great to be here.
So I'm so excited that you came back because you were on our non-romantic shifter panel during the New Year
Right.
Live Blitz.
Mhm.
So yay
Yeah, no,
for
I'm
that.
I'm honored to be here. At first, I felt bad signing up because I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I just got to be on her channel. I don't know if this is for me, you know. So I like
Yeah.
looked through to make sure I wasn't the only one, and I was like, okay, cool, I can do this.
Yes, I love the one-to-one live chats because we get to hear more about you and your books and what got you writing and
Yeah.
like all the stuff that readers have burning questions about. So,
Uh huh.
but yeah, for those who don't know you or didn't catch the panel earlier this year, do you mind telling us a little bit about who you are and what kind of fantasy, science fantasy you write?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Brent. Brent Miller. That's my name. Um. So what I write is it's a difficult question to answer because I write stories, and I think that there's a beauty in storytelling, but like I don't like playing the genre game, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
like particularly drawn to one genre over another. Um, so I have two series out right now, sort of three, but one of them I published in high school, and so I'm kind of not like marketing that one as much, but
Right.
but the two big ones are Cursed, which is like a werewolf, fantasy type story, and then Powerless is more of a dystopian superpower thing. And it's just like, how did they go together? I don't know, but they were like at the time I was writing them, they were what inspired me. So
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, and I guess
Yeah,
I have a tendency to ramble, but like yeah,
that's fine.
that's kind of the way that I answer who I am, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, oh, like tell me something about you. This is it. This is like you know. Um, I'm
Yeah, as an introvert,
I
I
don't
always
know.
hate that question too. It's like, what am I supposed
Yeah,
to say? Hi, I'm Katherine. It's nice to meet you. I like books.
I like books. Yeah, I like God and I like books. I like martial arts. That's three whole things. That's
That's
like
right.
that's enough, right?
And do you have a cat or a dog?
I have a cat, but I don't like him.
Oh
Um, no, I'm not. I'm actually allergic to cats, but he's my brother's.
no. Oh
So
yeah.
so yeah. I mean, he hangs out here, but I try to keep him out of the office so I don't get like hives.
Yeah, so you've got the standard writer's familiar, although
Yep,
he's relegated to another to another
it's fine.
place.
It's perfect. It's,
Yes. Oh goodness. So yeah, you've got the two series, and of course, I think I put your old one on the picture for
yeah,
this too. But I think it's really interesting that you started sort of more sciency, and now you write sort of
mhm,
science fantasy. What
right.
brought you to writing that genre, those mix of genres?
Yeah, yeah. So um, the first. Okay, so the first thing really that happened, I just love werewolves. That's what drew me to the fantasy, right? Like, so that's what drew me more to the fantasy side. But then I also I'm a scientist, engineer by trade, and I like answers and I like explanations.
Hmm.
So, what bothers me a lot of the time in fantasy books, and I don't mean this disparagingly, right? But to me, it's like, okay, there's magic. Why? Well, it just
Mm-hmm.
is. That's just how the world works, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was telling you a little bit about this before we went live, but like even in my werewolf story, I it's a stretch, but I use science at least in the background to say like, well, through essentially there's a process in which we can revert cells to stem cells, and if you could do that on a wide scale, you could theoretically completely change the shape of something. So it's like just this little bit of science that's there to
Mm-hmm.
tell you like, no, there's a way that this happens, you know. And it fuels things like their recovery, their metabolism, just things that we think of for werewolves, but I'm like, this is why.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so that's why I blend them, I think, because I have a particular love of fantasy, but I also just love answering questions. Like,
Right. So there will be fantasy, but there's also some science behind why it is the way it
yeah,
is at the same time.
right. Usually you have to dig for it. Like I'll put it in a passing line, you know, because generally I think those lines are more for me than for my readers. Like some people
Mm.
might be interested, but some people are probably just like, I don't care. It's werewolves, and that's totally fine.
Yeah,
Um, but they're in there.
absolutely. And we get that vibe from the cover too.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned earlier, you came on for our non-romantic shifter panel, which I think may be a newer idea to some of the readers that are watching because the market has been so saturated with
Yeah.
the werewolf love just setup.
Right. Right.
um, did you feel nervous creating and putting out as a like publisher, self-publishing
Mhm.
books that weren't really in that niche?
Um, no, because honestly, I like okay, so obviously my dream is to be a full-time author, to be able to support myself on this income. But I also I like being unique. And
Mm.
so I got my first 1-star review the other day.
Oh,
Um, yeah, which was it's like it's a weird feeling, right? Because it's like, okay, that hurts, but also like I feel successful now because like
mhm.
it's a stepping stone we all have to take.
It
Um,
means you're legit. Like I haven't paid these
right,
people off. These are real reviewers.
exactly, yeah. And you know, not everything's for everyone, but the reason I bring that up is because one of the things that that person was saying was like, there's just an over reliance of tropes, and I was like, you know, obviously your opinion is valid, but like how, like because the my favorite thing to do in writing is like I don't want there to be a story like mine. There's something weird, something different. Even like with the werewolves, they my kind of twist on lycanthropy lore is where they're scratched, they get a scar, right? And
Mm-hmm.
everything else heals, even wounds from before the transformation, but that scar is always there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just it's not like, oh, this is game changing, but it's just a little piece of lore that makes my stories unique, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just way went around a circle answering your question.
No, that's
uh,
fine. Yeah, I think
the
it's a great point for the writers who are on too. That you
Mhm.
look at the 1-star reviews, and I've quit calling them bad reviews because I feel like
Uh-huh.
there's more often than not they help readers who wouldn't like my book know that this
Yeah,
isn't a good book for them, which prevents future bad reviews.
right.
You know, in that case, well, you know, I mean,
Yeah,
the more specific they are, the more helpful it is. But
right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, you know, ratings hurt. They just
Mhm,
drop the
mhm,
stars and make it like, but if you're gonna leave me a review and it's like it's not for everybody, like that's
mhm,
okay, you know. It wasn't your genre. Um, but but yeah. Also my sales went up like drastically the next day. So
oh,
I'm
that's
like,
nice. You're like,
yeah,
thank you,
like
1-star review.
yeah. Like I don't know. I'll take it. People like controversy.
That's
Um,
right. Do you plan on writing about other shifters or just werewolves? Luna asks.
yeah. So in Cursed, I kind of liked the idea of just werewolves. And so that was where I started for I think the first 3 books in the series. Um, the 4th book and then a couple of the novellas that tells, you know, like after, they do expand the world. You know, because there are hunters all the way from the first book.
Mm-hmm.
And um, they're not werewolf hunters. They're hunters. And I have
Mm-hmm.
like there's like little one of my beta readers actually caught a mistake, that because I said that the hunters hunt supernatural creatures, and she was like, well, they
Mm.
hunt werewolves, and I'm like, oh no, they don't. So there's like there's a whole rich world, but the characters that I focus on are werewolves. And then you kind of see a couple other shifters and other supernatural creatures that aren't necessarily shifters as well, that pop up. So
Awesome. And I think it
yeah,
was the panel you were on where we were talking about was it were geese?
the weregeese, yes.
I think Huckleberry is actually going to put were geese.
I I know I am probably gonna have to read that one because I am excited to see how she pulls it off. I'm sure she will.
Yeah. So I know on Amazon, a lot of your books are subcategorized as young adult. What do you feel differentiates young adult from like new adult or adult when it comes to writing
Yeah.
this genre?
Well, so to be honest, I think that the lines are kind of blurred between young adult and new adult.
Mm.
Um, and I categorize my books as young adult mostly because most people don't know what new adult is.
Mm. Mm.
But I personally feel like they fit more into that category.
Mm.
Um, for me, especially recently, young adult has the age has dropped. Um,
Mm.
like Harry Potter, people call a young adult book. Like, that's a children's book, I mean, which is fine. It's just now we have like 12 to 14-year-olds reading young adult, and so I'm for me that like it has to do with themes, levels of description of
Mm.
graphic, um, like sex scenes, which I don't have, or violence, which I do. um,
Mm.
Also, I feel like the age of the characters has a role.
Mm.
A lot of times people immediately assume like, oh, high school, young adult, right? Which I think
Mm.
is kind of fair. But there are definitely times where the themes kind of contradict that, I think. So it takes a lot more of a like what's the word, like a magnifying glass, like you have to kind of research the themes, I think,
Yeah.
before you can really make that distinction.
Yes. So you work in a science field by day,
Yes, I
and then
do.
you write.
Uh-huh.
Do your real life friends and family know that you're a writer? Is this a special
Oh yeah.
privilege the viewers get?
No, they're so they are the victims of constant storyboarding and beta drafts. So yeah, it's pretty it's pretty bad. Sometimes I have to like stop myself because I'm like, I've talked about this one scene with you like 8 times. I think we can let it go for now.
Mhm.
But they're all incredibly supportive. They show up to every event I have and everything. So
Oh, that's
um,
awesome.
yeah, yeah, it's great. My parents and my siblings are gonna. I have the Tucson Festival of Books on in March. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was accepted. Yeah, thank
Congratulations.
you. Yeah, it's super exciting. I just found out a couple days ago. Um, so I'm one of the indie authors there, and I'm gonna print out shirts and like merch. I bought a 3D printer to. I was motioning to my 3D printer, but it's not on the camera. um,
That's okay.
but yeah, like I have for Powerless, there's like this little medallion that I'm gonna print out and put it on a necklace, and they're gonna walk around with those. So um,
Wow.
yeah, so I'm really excited. They're walking advertisements. It's great. But
That's amazing. And that you can do it yourself because I know a lot of indie authors really are wondering, do we ever stand a chance of getting merch? How do we go about getting merch? But making it yourself just solves
uh-huh.
the problem like that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the benefit of engineering, right? Is I'm like 3D printing is kind of. I'm just kidding. I have YouTube. YouTube is the answer. I don't know anything.
We can turn to
I
the
pre-
YouTube overlords.
it's Al. Um, yeah.
Uh, well, congratulations on the event.
Thank
Is this
you.
the first
Yeah.
event that you're doing in person?
Oh no, I've done over a dozen book signings over the years.
Mm,
This is definitely the biggest. I
mm,
was at the Tucson Festival of Books last year, but last year it was like a sign up, first come, first serve type thing for the indie authors. I mean, they had the right, obviously, to reject books, but it was a lot more submit and get your time slot. And now I
mhm.
guess there was like a whole judging process. They had like people from English teachers and things from the university read books and decide which ones they were going to let in. So
Wow.
it feels a lot better, I guess, getting accepted when you go through a rigorous process like that than, um, just getting than just picking a time slot. But it
Mhm.
was nerve wracking because I'm sure you know this just as well as I do, and every author on this stream. Imposter syndrome is a real thing.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I can sit here and tell all of you that you should read it and it's wonderful and I'm great, and I genuinely believe that. But I also equally believe that it is terrible. Um,
Yeah, I think it's almost the fear of somebody thinking it's terrible or being
yeah.
like saying compared to this
Whoops.
other author who is like way up here, mine is
Uh,
terrible. But you can't really compare your early works to
yeah.
somebody else's 50-year works, you know?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
So your books have a lot of strong familial themes. Was your
yes,
strong
they do.
bond with your family a inspiration for that?
You know what? Yes. I I never thought about it, but definitely. Um,
Yeah,
huh.
that's
That's
awesome.
some introspecting right there.
Epiphanies.
Yeah. Huh.
One question I got for you is what advice would you give a pantser who's wanting to learn to plan?
Oh man. Um, okay. So the thing is, I think if you're wanting to learn to plan, for me, I don't write. I don't have an outline. Right.
Mhm.
That's too much planning for me. But I also don't just like sit in front of a page. Like I have scenes that eat me alive at night. um,
Mhm.
and so what I'll do is take notes and detail that scene, detail things about it, right? And then getting there is a little bit more like winging it. But I
Mhm.
guess that's the advice that I would give is start by planning the things that you really care about. Like um, do you know where this is going to end? Do you know your character's arc? What and okay, so the other thing is focusing on themes, which
Mhm.
like I'm learning that because I'm actually trying a new process called it's Reddit serials, and I'm
Mhm.
publishing a chapter like every week. So there's no going back and editing, right?
Mhm.
So I need to have a solid plan of where this is going. Um, and the way that I'm doing that is just thinking like, okay, this is the theme that I'm trying to like the message I'm trying to convey with my entire story, and every character's arc has to feed into that somehow.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think like general ideas, and then the specifics, worry about later.
Mhm. And this is a great, I'd almost call it like a planting method. You've
Mm-hmm.
got the key important things, and then you still give yourself room to breathe on the
Yeah,
other stuff.
yeah, because I find like you can get really rigid if you have a plan, and you know the story can suffer from that. But also my books are a little wordy, to be fair, but like I don't go and cut out 200 pages like a lot of people do, but
Mhm.
it's because I'm like I don't necessarily have quite the freedom in my writing to go on a tangent for 14 pages, because I'm like, no, I have to get here.
Mhm.
This is where I need to
Mhm.
go. So it's like it helps balance those things out a little bit. Um,
Yeah, that's great advice.
Thank you.
Who is your favorite character to write and why?
Oh man. Okay, my favorite character. That's tough. Okay, my favorite character that I've written or to write. Two totally different questions.
We'll say the ones that
Um,
you've written, the one they can go read about.
yeah. So, well, so my favorite character that I've written is his name's Tyler. He's in the Cursed series, and he I'm gonna give you guys a secret here. Garrick is not the main character of the series, um, and like I have plans for a TV show. You know, that's the dream. I don't know if it'll happen, but the TV show would be framed very much from Tyler, and it's like
Mm.
Garrick is the hero, but Tyler is the protagonist. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, and it's like it's told from Garrick's perspective, so that isn't going to be obvious, but it kind of just started to morph into that as I wrote more. Um, so you know, if I'm ever at a Comic Con, like I'll be quizzing people, and everybody's going to get this question wrong. So there's your insight.
So we
But
know
yeah, so
before you go to one of Brent's events.
exactly, yeah. But yeah, Tyler's my favorite character I've ever written. He's just like really a he's the epitome of a good friend. And he's there. He drops everything to help Garrick try to find a cure. Thank you. Um, but then you know, he is also really dynamic as the books go on, and he has some struggles that he has to go through and stuff. Um,
Mhm.
but my favorite character to physically write is not him because he's a nerd and he was really difficult like writing his dialogue. Um, so Lance is a character in Powerless, Lance
Mhm.
Quill, um, and he's in a couple chapters of the first book, but it's actually narrated from his perspective in the second one. Um, he's my favorite character, like to write. Just
Mm.
it just like flows naturally, and he's so idealistic, but also it feels like I'm writing manga, which I've
Mm. Oh,
always wanted to do,
nice.
but I can't draw. But you know, this is a novelized manga because um, his superpower is enhanced reflexes, enhanced senses in
Mhm.
general. So basically, he's Spider Man, and like he can't get hit.
Oh, wow.
And that's just like, yeah, it's so fun writing his fight scenes, and he's just dodging everything, or like because of his reflexes, he can do things that humans can't do because he's not thinking. He's just like, oh, there's an arrow coming. Okay, I'm gonna catch it, flip it around, and throw it back at him, and it's like that makes sense because there's no like processing in his brain. His body just does it. So I have a lot of fun with him and like seeing how far I can take that power.
And so is he a werewolf
So,
too?
no, so that's in Powerless. So that's the
Powerless. Okay.
superpower series. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
I was going to say
yeah,
this is sort of Matrix-y a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah. It is. He's definitely got some Neo bullet time vibes.
Awesome. Awesome. So, yes,
Yeah.
Brent, as he said at the beginning, writes a little bit of everything. You've got
Mhm.
superhero y series, and then you've got the werewolf, science fantasy ish, more fantasy that
More fantasy, but
series.
yeah,
Um, yeah. And then you've got lives coming up this year. How about book releases this year? What does this year look like for
yeah.
you writing wise?
So writing wise, I am planning on releasing Boundless, which is the sequel to Powerless. That is, I'm about halfway through writing it, but editing doesn't take me quite as long as it takes some people because
Mhm,
I
mhm,
just kind of do it. I just give it a once over, um,
mhm.
which I mean it's I wouldn't advise it. Some typos get through, but I I'm really meticulous the first time that I write something so that I don't have to. Like I know a lot of people give the advice of just word vomit and go back and edit, but I
Mhm,
hate editing. So for
mhm.
me, it's like no, I'm going to do it right the first time. Takes a long time to write, but that's what works for me, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Anyway, so I'm releasing that, and then I'm also gonna try to release a collection of novellas for Cursed. Those ones it takes place after the main series. It's kind of like an aftermath thing about Garrick's daughter and some like the future for the
Mhm,
family. Um, and that's probably my favorite book that I've ever written because for some reason I don't know why everyone is an only child in Cursed. It just kind of like I'm just writing the
Just
characters and
happened.
none of them. Yeah. So uh, in the sequel, Garrick has 4 kids, and these kids now are like they have sibling interactions. They're like there's a whole dynamic, and it's so fun for me. And it's like it's got more humor than the like Cursed is pretty dark sometimes, so like kind of lightens the tone. So I'm really excited about that one. Um, so yeah, got a couple things on the horizon.
Awesome. A lot to look forward to. And if you're wanting to follow Brent's work, I've dropped the links in the description box on YouTube for you as well.
Thank you.
But Luna asks, have you ever had a story take on a life of its own while you were trying to write it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, that's kind of what happened with the entire Cursed series. Because in my head, it started out as this kid, Garrick, who it's like a bildungsroman, and it's like, okay, he doesn't like being a werewolf. Now he goes against the pack. That all still happens, but I'm not gonna divulge too much more. And
Mm-hmm.
but like, and then he becomes this big hero, and he's like, and that was my plan. And then as I started writing him, it took him a lot longer to get there than I thought it would. And that's where I was saying like Tyler kind of became my favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole story, none of it was going to happen. Like he was supposed to be the best friend who helped Garrick out a little bit, and then all of a sudden he's a main character. So that one's written in third person, so he doesn't directly narrate, but it's like third person limited. So he's one of the narrators in the third and fourth book, and like I I was not planning for the story to go that way. I actually completely rewrote the last book in the series because by the time like okay, see, so I said I don't edit, but as I was editing, I finished up editing the third book, and I was like, fourth one doesn't make sense anymore, and I just like started over.
Yeah, that's the trouble when
Yeah,
a book goes its own way.
yeah,
Yeah, and for the question about editing, there's actually a panel that is going to come up in the very first week of February about different options indie authors have to get their book edited or edit themselves.
yeah.
And that's going to touch on software you can use to help
Oh,
auto
cool.
edit your stuff and then other things too. But like Brent said, today with all the access we have, so much of the editing can be done yourself if you know what you're looking for and all of that
Katherine,
too.
stop
But if
talking
you
yourself
want,
out of a job.
I mean, and I say that even as an editor because I feel like I pay editors to edit my work, even
Yeah.
as an editor, because I know page blindness sets in and I'm
Yep.
blinded, like you said, the typos that are going to slip through. But you can get a proofreader. If the level of editing you've done is really good, you can get a proofreader, and they're usually way more affordable. And I'm saying this more to the authors who are watching. If you're
Right.
nervous about taking Brent's risk and putting your book out there, um, which sometimes pays off for some authors. It really depends on how much detail you pay to your work, really, I
Right.
guess. Um, but if you're nervous about that, there are ways you can combine them and spend less money than if you pay
Mm-hmm.
for, a line edit, a copy edit, proofread, and a galley proof,
Yeah.
the whole
Right.
shebang.
Yeah, because like, do you know how much? I mean, you do. How much it costs to line edit and copy edit a 120,000 word book?
It's
Like,
expensive.
I'm like,
I
okay,
think
well,
I
that's a year's
paid
salary.
Mine was 103,000 words by the time I cut
Mm-hmm.
it down from the developmental edit, but the developmental edit was going to be very expensive. And the line editor
Right.
was originally quoting me $1,600. And then I
Yeah.
found one of those softwares, the AutoCrit software, before I ever worked for them, in case somebody's
Mm-hmm.
watching that knows that I've worked with them. Before I ever worked for them, and I got a lifetime membership, and it was $300 flat, and I've never needed a
Oh
line
wow,
edit since. And
that's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it was just great. So it's been worth the money I invested. Right there,
Mhm.
I saved myself $1,300 on that one book,
Yeah.
but it's like mine was only 103, and it was going to be $1,600 to line edit. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the quotes I got was like 7 grand. That person was probably just trying to do something weird. I don't know.
oh
But
yeah, yeah, no, and when you have peers that review your books, and like you said, you sent your book off to the festival and it passed what they're
yeah.
expecting. That's always a good sign. You can tell right away if you go Brent's route and it doesn't work, because you will see reviews start coming in and
Yeah.
they'll
You
say,
will know.
filled with with editing error. This happened to me with my first two
Yeah.
books that I tried to self edit. The reason I
Uh-huh.
don't self edit anymore is because the bad reviews that were like, there's so many
Oh well.
editors. So, yeah. But I like what you said, though. If you are going to try to do it yourself, breaking it up into chunks, doing it, not trying to do it
Yeah.
in one fell swoop, and hey, I've edited my whole book over the weekend and it's ready to go. Like,
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the tough thing, right? Because I'll edit like a chapter a day when I'm editing, because if I do 2 or 3 chapters, then I start to gloss over the times when I used the wrong form of two because my finger got stuck. I'm just like typing too many O's, and the computer misses some stuff like that. Um, it's funny because like the spelling errors, I'm not too embarrassed about. I'll send a book out with some spelling errors. Like, I'm human. If
mhm,
if you take the number of errors and divide it by the number of words, I still got an A. But
mhm,
it's the grammar mistakes that I'm embarrassed by.
mhm.
If it's like if I forgot to put an apostrophe on your, like, no, I can't. Because that's the kind of stuff that, those like the commercials or the memes or whatever, where there's like the killer and it's like, you're next, and somebody comes up and puts the apostrophe E. I'm like, that's me. I would do that. So if I catch these mistakes in my book, or if somebody else does, it's mortifying. Like,
The life of a writer, right there.
yeah.
The pet
um,
thing that we're like, I can't do one more te in this book.
right.
Uh,
Yeah.
but seriously, I know we're over just a couple minutes, but I had one more question before
Okay.
we hopped off. And it was about your covers. It was saying, do
Yeah.
you design your own covers?
I do not. I have no artistic capability. Although I did draft one of them up with stick figures. So I'm pretty proud of that. But no, I work with somebody on Fiverr. All of the cursed covers are done by someone named Anton. Um,
Mhm.
he is absolutely phenomenal. I recommend him to everybody I work with, or everybody I talk to. Um, but it's, if too many people go to him, then it's like he's not gonna have time for me. So don't use him. No, I'm just kidding. He's great. And then Powerless, and probably all the sequels for Powerless were done by someone named Elmer, also on Fiverr, and he's amazing too. He's great to work with. So I've had great fortune, I guess, with Fiverr. I know a lot
Mhm.
of people have horror stories, but that's where I go, and it hasn't let me down. So
Mhm. Yeah, the covers are always hit and miss, I think, when you're an
yeah,
author, just trying to find the designer who gets your vision for your work. And we all describe our
yeah,
works in different levels of detail. And
right.
yeah, I'd be
Well,
like you,
and
I'd have
like,
just random stick figures.
yeah, and like I have detailed ideas of exactly what I want the picture to be, because like what I like to do, it's not true of all of them, but it's fairly true of Cursed. You look at the cover, you know how that book is going to end. You just don't know
Hmm.
it yet. And then you finish
Hmm.
the book and you look at the cover again and you're like, this guy, like, that's the stuff that I like to pull, is the subtle. So I have like they're very specific designs in my head. I just can't make them happen. So I message Anton and I'm like, hey, here's exactly what I'm thinking, and it's like, great. So
Hmm. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for joining us and
mhm,
talking to us about your books and your writing process and
of
everything.
course. Yeah, thanks
I'm
for having
so
me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And everybody, please go check out Brent's books. Again, the links are in the description box if you're watching on YouTube. Twitter people, you can head over to my YouTube. The link is in my profile, or you can follow Brent on social as well. But super, super
Yeah.
excited to get to chat with you. You'll have to come back and tell us how all this
Hey,
stuff went.
yeah, I mean, I will be here as frequently as you'll have me. I love talking to all of you guys. So
Well, that's awesome. Yes, very excited. And if you are eager to hear about other indie authors before Brent comes back, we have a indie author live chat or live read almost every day between now and the end of February, with a few days off for me to get my wisdom teeth out at the end of next week.
a few days.
A few days off for that. But that aside, we'll be having a lot more authors on. So you can subscribe to the channel to see them. I promise I will not be on here right after my wisdom teeth.
I know. It took me a while to recover from that one. I didn't want to talk for like a week.
I'll be writing a lot that week. We'll catch up on
Yeah,
all
there
the
you go.
writing. Well, all right. Thank you so much again, Brent, and everybody who
Yeah,
joined. Hope you have a great evening.
you too. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.